Former President Obama is jumping into Virginia's redistricting fight. This morning, he released a new ad in support of a measure that would give Virginia Democrats the opportunity to pick up more seats in this November's midterm elections. Here to break down what this means for the race, the Hill's campaign reporter, Caroline Vakil. Hi, Caroline. So what is former President Obama's pitch to voters? And what is he trying to get his message across to them right now?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. So former President Obama aired an ad today, essentially urging Virginia voters to vote for a redistricting referendum that's taking place on April 21st, so next month. And his message is that he's basically invoking a message around democracy and saying that voters' democracy is under attack. He's essentially talking about how President Trump and national Republicans have been encouraging Republican states across the country last year to start this redistricting arms race, essentially, of having.
All right, guys, Dr. John here. So this happening right now, the ghost that has haunted Donald Trump for over a decade has finally stepped out of the shadows and is now actively, methodically, and publicly working to end his presidency. Barack Obama, the man whose very existence in the Oval Office triggered Trump's original descent into political conspiracy mongering, is no longer just a symbolic foil or a convenient target for late-night social media tirades.
Republican states try to redraw their maps ahead of the 2026 midterms. He's saying that essentially, voters can address this and fight back against Republicans by voting in favor of this redistricting amendment that essentially gives lawmakers the ability to temporarily move around their state's redistricting commission, pass a new map, which would give Democrats 4 pickup opportunities in Old Dominion. And he's also emphasizing that this would be a temporary measure and that, the map making process would sort of go back to how it normally operates after 2030. So that's essentially what he's pushing for. He's leaning into that democracy issue around democracy, and just trying to say that this is a way to fight back against national Republicans.
And so you mentioned this is taking place next month, but what more do we know about this? We've seen these redistricting battles play out in multiple states across the U.S. and some have even, been challenged in their state Supreme Courts as well. So, what more do we know about this vote that's taking place next month?
He has become the operational spearhead of a surgical campaign designed to strip away Trump's last line of defense, the Republican majority in the House of Representatives that stands between him and a third impeachment. And the sound coming from Trump is not the confident bluster of a man ready for a fight. It is the unhinged, terrified shrieking of someone who has looked at the map, run the numbers, and realized that the most formidable political organizer of the modern era is coming directly for his head.
Sure. Well, there's been a lot of litigation around it, a lot of back and forth. The Virginia Supreme Court has essentially paved the way in 2 different decisions to say that Democrats can hold their referendum next month. There have been a number of issues that Republicans have tried to point out, saying that there have been issues around how the lawmakers convened to try to pass this referendum. Essentially how it was done, whether it was done in a timely manner in time for the 2026 election. Republicans have taken issue with the ballot language, arguing it's misleading. So there have been a number of issues raised, but the Virginia Supreme Court has essentially paved the way for Democrats to be able to hold that referendum.
Today is Judgment Day in Virginia. A constitutional amendment referendum, known as the Vote Yes campaign, is on the ballot, and its passage would immediately reconfigure the state's congressional districts in a way that sends tremors through the entire Republican power structure. Virginia currently holds an 11-seat congressional delegation split with a razor-thin margin, 6 Democrats and 5 Republicans. The proposed redistricting would temporarily redraw that map to create a 10-to-1 advantage for Democrats.
Next month, however, the Virginia High Court is weighing broader issues around whether or not the referendum is legal. So we might have a scenario where the redistricting effort, the redistricting measure, I should say, passes next month, with the High Court maybe invalidating it in a separate, final decision. But right now, the High Court is allowing the process to play out. We're also at the same time going to see Florida Republicans convening for a special session around that same time in April to pass new maps. So these are sort of the last 2 states to watch for in terms of states that are slated to pass new maps ahead of November.
And so, Caroline, let's just take a listen to President Obama's message in that ad for a second.
We can't afford 2 more years of unchecked power and zero accountability in Washington. Help us chart a better path forward, Virginia. Early voting begins on March 6th. Election Day is April 21st. Vote yes, Virginia.
A devastating swing that could single-handedly flip control of the House, and the face of the campaign urging Virginians to vote yes. The voice-cutting ads, the presence blanketing the airwaves and social media feeds is Barack Hussein Obama. For Trump, this is not a political disagreement. This is a nightmare made flesh. This is the man whose legacy he has tried for years to dismantle.
So, we heard from him urging people to get out to vote, but what exactly will the maps change about Virginia seats? We know, the Republicans are in a fight for their lives with a razor-thin House majority as well, right, in Congress right now. So what exactly will it change about Virginia seats?
So essentially, Virginia has a 6-5 Democratic edge in its congressional delegation. That means there are 6 House Democrats that represent the state and 5 House Republicans. What Democrats have done is they've already passed a new map that has been signed into law by Governor Abigail Spanberger. And if this referendum passes, this new map that has been passed through the state would go into effect, until 2030, essentially, and how that process plays out. And the new map would actually create a 10-1 edge for Democrats. So essentially, it would give Democrats 4 pickup opportunities in the House, which is critical here. I mean, Virginia is seen as the last state that gives Democrats a real fighting chance to add pickup opportunities in November.
Now leading the charge to assemble the constitutional mechanism for his removal. Trump's response was not a strategic counter-message or a coordinated party effort. It was a desperate, rambling phone call into a friendly right-wing radio program, The John Fredericks Show, where he proceeded to unravel in real time. The voice on the recording is not the voice of a man projecting strength.
We saw efforts trying to happen in Maryland and Illinois, and there was a lot of pushback among leaders. Illinois Democrats sort of felt like they didn't need to do so given that Indiana didn't pass their own maps. And in Maryland, the Senate president there, who's a Democrat, has expressed, extreme opposition to this despite frustrations from the governor and other Democrats in the state. So all eyes are on Virginia here for Democrats. The math right now is sort of shaking out. We're seeing some litigation playing out over other maps in places like Utah, for example.
It is the voice of a man staring into the abyss. He told Fredericks, with a quavering mixture of indignation and fear, that if the yes vote wins in Virginia, he is going to be impeached. He specifically named Obama as the architect of this threat, framing the former president's involvement not as civic engagement.
In Missouri, but in terms of sort of the last remaining states, it's Virginia and Florida that will kind of help determine the remaining math here.
And so what are Virginia lawmakers saying? Does it have this, and we know it has the support of the Governor Abigail Spanberger, right? But are we hearing anything from the Virginia lawmakers themselves on this issue?
Yes, all 6 House Democrats in Virginia have said that they support this referendum. Abigail Spanberger actually also just released a video or ad sort of backing this referendum as well. And Democrats are really emphasizing this point that it's temporary.
But as a personal vendetta designed to destroy him. Obama's going to want to impeach me, Trump wailed, his words tumbling over each other in a cascade of grievance. This is terrible. It's terrible. Can you believe it?
And that this is something that they're doing in response to Republicans. Abigail Spanberger in her video, for example, noted that she was in favor of the bipartisan, redistricting commission efforts. And so she said that she still backs that, and that's not something that's going to change. So I think Democrats are really trying to walk the fine line by saying that they do support this measure, but also trying to emphasize to voters this is temporary. And this is in response to what's going on nationally among Republicans.
That's right, Caroline. So all eyes on Virginia's redistricting vote ahead of the essential midterms coming up in November.
The clips from that radio call are painful to hear, not because they reveal any new policy insight, but because they strip away the entire facade of presidential invincibility and reveal the raw, exposed nerve of a man who knows his enemies have found the path to his destruction. And then comes the irony, the staggering, breathtaking hypocrisy that Trump cannot escape even as he begs his supporters for sympathy. He complains that the Virginia redistricting effort is unfair, a grotesque injustice being visited upon him by his enemies. But this was his playbook first. The gerrymandering strategy that has aggressively redrawn maps in Texas and across other Republican-controlled states, tilting the electoral playing field to lock in MAGA majorities, was pioneered and championed by Trump's own operatives. Democrats, led by figures like Governor Newsom in California with his own redistricting countermeasures, are finally doing what the GOP has been doing for cycles. They are using every legal tool available to fight for fair representation. Trump's cries of unfairness are the complaints of a bully who has just discovered that his target has learned to fight back. He began this war over congressional maps, and now he is shocked, genuinely, viscerally shocked, that the other side has decided to engage. While Trump was melting down on right-wing radio, Barack Obama was doing what he has always done so effectively, cutting through the noise with a message of calm, direct, and devastating precision. He released a series of ads that served as a masterclass in political communication. Looking directly into the camera, Obama addressed the voters of Virginia with a simple, urgent directive. Virginia, if you haven't done it already, make a plan to vote yes on the redistricting referendum. You can vote early and election day is today. Find your polling place. There was no bombast, no insult, no wild accusation, just the quiet, confident authority of a former president who understands that democracy operates not through tantrums but through participation. The contrast could not have been more stark. On one screen, a current president shrieking into a radio phone about his impending impeachment. On the other, a former president calmly encouraging citizens to exercise their constitutional rights. The visual and tonal disparity encapsulates the entire state of American politics at this moment. One man consumed by panic over his own survival, the other focused on the mechanics of democratic engagement. Obama's presence extended beyond ads. In the lead up to the vote, he was seen with community leaders, including Mayor McDonough in New York, spending time with young people and demonstrating, without having to say a word, what mature, grounded leadership actually looks like. The images are powerful not because they are dramatic, but because they are so ordinary. A former president hanging out with kids, showing up in communities, doing the quiet work of citizenship. For Trump, who measures every interaction through the lens of dominance and submission, this must be utterly maddening. Obama is not trying to outshout him. He is not engaging in the mud pit. He is simply demonstrating through his actions a model of public service that Trump is constitutionally incapable of replicating. And that silent rebuke, more than any direct attack, is what drives Trump to his most unhinged outbursts. And those outbursts, when they came across Trump's social media feed, were a window into a mind in full panic. He began posting about Obama with a frantic intensity that veered from historical grievance to outright fabrications to bizarre conspiracy theories. One post attempted to frame his chaotic, ceasefire-violating negotiations with Iran as superior to the Obama-era nuclear deal, the JCPOA, which he described as one of the worst agreements ever made for national security. The post was riddled with the standard falsehoods about pallets of cash, a claim that has been debunked repeatedly by independent fact-checkers, and which fundamentally misrepresents a complex multilateral agreement that had actual enforcement mechanisms, something Trump's own ad hoc deal-making utterly lacks. But the factual inaccuracy is almost beside the point. The purpose of the post was not to inform, it was to attack. It was to lash out at the specter of Obama by trying, even retroactively, to tear down his signature diplomatic achievement. Then the spiral deepened. Trump posted a message so unhinged that it stopped even his own supporters in their tracks. He wrote, verbatim, that the highest-ranking U.S. intelligence official had just released smoking gun docs, proving that Obama and his associates had committed treason and sedition. He added that this meant he had been right about everything, that the news was fake, and that the deep state was real. The Post was a hallucinatory fever dream, a collection of baseless, recycled conspiracy theories strung together in a single, desperate transmission. Treason is a crime punishable by death. Accusing a former president of it based on fabricated evidence is not just irresponsible, it is an incitement. It is the act of a man who has lost all grip on the distinction between his internal fantasies and the external world. A man who has been so thoroughly haunted by the image of Barack Obama that he has retreated into a fictional universe where his predecessor is a criminal mastermind and he is the sole righteous crusader. This is the psychological state of the sitting president as the Virginia referendum approached, accusatory, delusional, and broadcasting his terror to the entire world without any apparent filter. While Trump was spiraling into conspiracy-laden social media frenzies, Obama maintained his disciplined focus on the singular goal. He kept cutting ads. His message was unwavering and tightly calibrated. Virginia, free and fair elections are under threat from the GOP. Vote yes. Every word of that message is designed to resonate beyond the immediate partisan battle. It frames the fight not as a Democratic power grab, but as a defense of democracy itself. It positions the Republican redistricting efforts as the true threat to fair elections and casts the yes vote as a corrective, a restoration of balance. This is the Obama style in full effect, elevating a procedural, often dry issue like redistricting into a moral crusade about the soul of the nation. And it works. It mobilizes the Democratic base, it persuades the wavering moderate, and it drives Trump, who has no counter-narrative beyond claiming victimhood, into a state of apoplectic fury. The Democratic offensive extended beyond Obama's direct involvement. Lawmakers like Congressman Ro Khanna took the fight directly into what should be the safest of all spaces for Trump, the studio of Fox News, and specifically the program hosted by Maria Bartiromo, one of Trump's most sycophantic media defenders. On her own turf, Khanna proceeded to systematically dismantle the GOP narrative. When Bartiromo attempted to pivot to attacks on Obama, seeking to frame the redistricting effort as some kind of radical anti-Trump conspiracy, Khanna did not retreat. He calmly, methodically explained the rationale, defended the former president's involvement, and made the case that what was happening in Virginia was a legitimate Democratic response to years of Republican gerrymandering. For Trump, watching his media allies fail to land blows against the Democratic message machine, the moment must have been infuriating. Even the walls of the Fox fortress are not holding. His safe spaces are being infiltrated. His talking points are being countered effectively on what is supposed to be his home court. The encirclement is complete. The interview with John Fredericks also revealed another dimension of Trump's crumbling posture, his growing desperation over Iran. Even as he was trying to rally opposition to the Virginia vote, he veered into a whining complaint session about his inability to achieve anything resembling the structured diplomatic framework that Obama had constructed. The JCPOA, for all its flaws as Trump sees them, was a working multilateral agreement that constrained Iran's nuclear program and provided international verification mechanisms. Trump tore it up, promised something better, and has delivered nothing but a cycle of escalation, unauthorized military strikes, and a series of collapsing ceasefires that have brought the region to the brink. His complaints about Iran are, like his complaints about redistricting, a confession of failure dressed in the costume of victimhood. The man who promised he alone could solve every problem is now reduced to whining on a radio show that the problems he inherited have somehow become worse under his watch. The new ads supporting the yes vote, released in the final stretch before the election, were a closing argument that perfectly encapsulated the stakes. They framed the choice in Virginia not as a local administrative matter, but as a national reckoning. The imagery, the messaging, and the implicit presence of Obama's endorsement all converged to deliver a single, powerful, and terrifying message to Donald Trump. The people are mobilizing, the districts are shifting, and the congressional majority you need to survive is about to vanish. The panic that has consumed Trump throughout the night and into the morning of the vote is not an act. It is not strategic theater. It is the authentic terror of a man who sees the trap closing, who knows that the person springing the trap is the one figure he has never been able to defeat in any meaningful, lasting way, and who is now broadcasting that terror in a dozen unhinged social media posts, radio calls, and public utterances. What is unfolding is larger than a single referendum in a single state. Virginia has become the epicenter of a proxy war for the survival of the Trump presidency. Barack Obama, by lending his political capital, his organizing infrastructure, and his unparalleled rhetorical skill to the Vote Yes campaign, has transformed what could have been a sleepy, low-turnout procedural vote into a nationally watched showdown with immediate consequences for impeachment. If the referendum passes, the House map shifts dramatically in favor of Democrats, and the pathway to a third impeachment becomes a straight, unimpeded highway. Trump knows this. He has said it explicitly now, on public airwaves, with his own voice. He is going to be impeached if this works. That is his admission, his confession of vulnerability. And the man leading the charge to make it happen is the same man whose birth certificate he demanded, whose legitimacy he spent years attacking, and whose legacy he has tried to erase. The revenge, if it comes, will be delivered not through a bitter tweet, but through the cold, impersonal machinery of democratic procedure and constitutional accountability. Barack Obama is not just campaigning. He is not just cutting ads. He is closing the loop on a circle of history that began with a racist conspiracy theory and may end with the removal of the conspiracy theorist from the highest office in the land. The terror that bleeds through every Trump post, every radio call, every frenzied attack on Obama is the terror of a man who has finally met an adversary he cannot bully, cannot dismiss, and cannot outrun. Obama is not running for office. He is immune to the electoral threats that silence other critics. He operates on a plane of public respect and moral authority that Trump, for all his bluster, has never been able to access. When Obama speaks, people listen. When Obama asks Virginians to vote, they turn out. And when Obama frames a vote as essential to saving democracy, the message cuts through the noise in a way that Trump's conspiracy-addled rants simply cannot match. The result, visible in the frantic energy radiating from Trump's social media feed, is a president in the grip of a full-blown psychological crisis, watching his worst enemy orchestrate his political demise and powerless to stop it. The vote is today. The ads are still running. The outcome is about to be decided. And Donald Trump is, by his own admission, staring down the barrel of a third impeachment with Barack Obama's finger on the trigger.